the sunlight is pretty. Is that
Oh, Carol, the microphone is on your face.
So you need to, that's perfect.
Or right there. Right. There you go. Okay, and so we have 1 minute to go. But we are live. Yeah.
Good morning. I'm Carol Dixon. I'm with the Idaho Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health, and welcome to our parent webinar for the month of May. Now, the month has flown by. We're really excited to have Teresa here join us this morning. She has been one of our favorite presenters. If you go back through our archive webinar, you will see some of Teresa's previous work, and she actually has some that we have listed as our favorites. So we're excited to have Teresa come back. She is going to be talking about self-care today. We chose a topic that we felt like, with Mother's Day just being yesterday, happy Mother's Day to all you moms that are out there, because we know how hardworking you are and how hard it can be, day to day, sometimes hour to hour. So we thought this would be a great opportunity to look at the topic of self-care. And I know when I have talked to parents about that before, they kind of look at me and go, oh, yeah, right, someday in a dream. But we also know it's so important just to be able to figure out how you really can make it happen. Because the better you can take care of yourself, the reality is the better you can take care of your entire family. So we're excited to see what Teresa has to share with us today. We know that it is very focused on that discussion of working with moms who are raising kids with special needs. So know that it is targeted for you. So a couple things before we get started is that we do have, at the end, we're going to be doing polls. So we ask you, please hold on to the very end. I think we probably have about 5 really short questions that you can get in and out of quickly. This information is very helpful to us, one, for making improvements for what we're doing, but also in terms of the data that we use for reporting for those that are helping us fund things like this. So please do the polls at the end. There's also a section that you will see for questions and answers. If you have a question, please stick it in there and we will read it to Teresa. So just let us know other information you would want. I think there's also a chat box on the side that you can share information with those that are participating. So if you just have some comments that you want to make or resources that you want to share, please go ahead and plug that in. And as I mentioned, we have archived webinars. If you go onto the Federation website and under Parent Education, you will see our webinars listed, and there are a whole series of several years of archived webinars on topics that kind of cover the whole gamut. So we really encourage people to jump in and find what's useful to you and check back frequently on that. So we'll be adding this one to it pretty much immediately. And I think next month, the last one is Vashti Somerville will be joining us, and she's going to be talking about social media and the impact that that has on today's kids and kind of helping to set up some really reasonable boundaries and expectations around the whole issue of our kids and phones and social media. So we'll have more information that we're pushing out on that one. And with that, thank you so much for joining us again. I look forward to what you have to share.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
It's great to be here. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in today. The topic today is extreme self-care, caring for yourself as much as you care for your child. So let's move on to the agenda for today. We're going to talk about why your self-care is imperative to your child's well-being, how to prioritize self-care, top stress management techniques that can be useful for anyone, especially parents of children with special needs, 8 ways to reduce the chaos in your home life, how to navigate the next crisis because you know there will be one, and how to create and implement your own personal extreme self-care plan. So let's get started. What is self-care and why is it important? Well, self-care, my definition on the dictionaries, is the practice of preserving and improving your overall well-being, not at the expense of your child, but to enhance the care of your child. So let's turn to, some ideas about self-care in terms of this. We're going to talk about basic examples of self-care. So it could be any activity you engage in that's going to demonstrate that you're preserving and improving your overall well-being, such as time alone or a walk in nature, maybe playing fetch with your family pet. And I say pet because when my children, a couple whom had special needs, were younger, we had a family rabbit who played fetch. So there you go. Eating enough. Sometimes when you're under a lot of stress or when you're not taking good care of yourself, you either eat too much or not enough. So eating enough is a part of basic self-care. Going to the doctor when you're ill, obviously seeking help for your own health and well-being, and maybe getting your hair and nails done. Those are all basic examples of self-care. So following that, you care for what you value. This is the basis of self-care. You spend the resources of time, emotional and physical energy, space, and money on things you value. Maybe you or a neighbor or maybe a spouse spend a lot of time when the weather's good, waxing your car, detailing it, making it look really great, maybe spending 3 or 4 hours on a weekend doing that. What does that tell you? That's telling you that it's something that you value, because that's what humans do, is we spend our time and resources on things that we hold in high value. So along with this is that you are modeling, when you perform self-care, any activity that's going to improve or enhance your well-being, not at the expense of your child. You're modeling the importance of self-care and caring about you as a person to your child. And what this does, what we found, is that it can possibly prevent addictions in your child in the future. It can prevent codependency in your child in the future. And it can also prevent their own burnout for whatever life is going to throw at them when they become adults. Also, no one can replace you. So if you don't care enough for yourself so that your physical body, your emotional stability starts to falter, you can't be replaced. There's only one of you. Also, if mama or papa or parent goes down, the whole family is going to suffer. So it is imperative that you care for yourself so that you're well enough to perform the duties and responsibilities and get to experience all the joys as well of being a parent. And also, self-care is not selfish. Self-care is self-preservation so that you can be an effective parent. So I hope I've given you a brief overview on what self-care is and why it is important. Now let's turn to how to prioritize self-care. So I like to view time as a circle, as a pie, 24 hours in a day, and you divide it into however many hours or portions of hours that you engage in certain activities. So let's look at a sample daily schedule. So if you look on your screen, you'll see a 24-hour day broken up into different colored parts of your pie. Starting from the top right, you have sleep for a certain amount of time. You have meals, that's prep, cleanup, and eating. You have housework, childcare, driving, shopping and errands, maybe appointments. If you have a child with special needs, you obviously are going to many appointments every week, sometimes daily, sometimes multiple appointments a day. I've been there, I've done that. It's hard. You've got to schedule time for it. Media, if you'll notice on this sample schedule, I put it at about 13%. That's kind of average. It's actually under average. It's about 3 hours a day in my sample schedule. It is quite a lot of time. Grooming as well as work. And this is a sample individual that maybe has a part-time job. So moving on, what's important to do when you're looking at your time as a pie is how to prioritize it. You're going to have to remove or reduce portions of your daily schedule before you can put in another activity or something that's going to take up some time. So let's turn to another example of extreme self-care included in this daily schedule. If you look at the top of your pie chart, you'll see extreme self-care in the bright yellow, and you'll see that I took some time from housework, which generally isn't everyone's favorite activity. So I thought I'd steal some time from there for our sample. This is how it works. This is how you can make some time for self-care, how to prioritize self-care in your own life. On the next slide, you look at, I replaced some time from media. I took it from media. If you look at the next slide. and I instead used it for self-care. So this example is totally up to you. Your life is in your control. Sometimes it may feel that it's out of your control, but your schedule, your life is truly under your control. You are the navigator of your ship. So it's very important that you look at what your priorities are and make time for self-care. So how can you do that? Well, let's move on to the next slide. First, you want to prioritize self-care by identifying the top 3 to 5 priorities in your life right now at this season. We're going to touch a little bit more about the season of life right in the future in a few minutes here, but let's just do this as an example. I'm just going to throw some ideas out. So maybe you're writing your priorities, your top 3 to 5 right now, and you're like, well, I'm a parent, so obviously my kids' welfare, their well-being, and their education is very important. So that's going to be my priority. Oh, and yeah, I have a job. I have to keep the lights on, keep the roof over our head, food on the table. So work's a priority. Oh, and I really like donating my time or other resources to this particular charity. So I'm going to put that in there too. And oh gosh, yeah, I have a spouse or a significant other, and I better make time for that. That's got to be a priority. And oh yeah, we want to build a house this year too, or maybe next. So I better put that in too. So maybe you've got your list all complete. Maybe that's what it looks like. Well, let's move on to the next slide. Extreme self-care needs to be on your list. I'm serious about this, friends. You have got to put self-care on there, because if you go down, your family's going to suffer. Your child's going to suffer. So how can we do that? Let's go to the next slide. Look at your current time pie. So we're going to go look at that slide that says sample daily care or daily schedule. Look at your pie. Well, where are you going to put in self-care? Where are you going to put in time for your partner? Where are you going to put in time for your charity? Where's time to work on building a house? You know, where is that? So let's go to the next slide. You need to have your extreme top 3 to 5 priorities in this season of your life. So you're going to have to make some tough decisions. Obviously, self-care's got to be up there. If you go down, the whole family's going to suffer. Remember, it's not selfish to engage in self-care. It is self-preserving, and it is not at the expense of your child. It only enhances your care of them. So here's an example. Self-care is at the top. Your kids' well-being is underneath that. You need to keep a roof over your head and food on the table. So work's got to be there. Charity of choice. You might not have time for that in this season of your life. You might need to wait on it for now. When you are eliminating things from your priorities, people, this is only for a season. This is temporary. Parenting is temporary. You'll always be a parent, but your active years of parenting are limited. And you've got to make time for a primary relationship, because if you don't, you won't have one. And building a house, you might have to wait on this for this season right now. Your child might need more appointments. You might have OT, PT, counseling. They might need, DT right now. I guess we call it HS or HI now. Back in the day, it was called DT and IBI. So let's go to the next slide. And here's what your priorities might look like in a sample for the sample person using the extreme self-care model. We've taken time from housework and media, and we fit in extreme self-care, and we fit in time for a primary relationship. Obviously, if you don't have a primary relationship, you can shuffle your own daily time pie around to reflect your priorities in this season of your life. But do you see how this works? You cannot take time out of your pie unless you put something else in it. You can't cram 36 hours into a 24-hour time pie. Let's move on to the next slide. I briefly touched on parenting as a season. It can be very helpful to consider your life in terms of seasons. And you're in a different season right now than before you had children. You are in the extreme parenting season, by the way. Childhood is limited. Your life as an extreme parent is limited. There will be more time in the future, especially for other things that are not your top priorities, for you to engage in those. But right now, self-care has got to be on the top, and caring for your child has got to be up there as well. There'll be more time for other pursuits when your child is grown. I'm on the other side of that right now. I'm an empty nester. I have plenty of time for charity work. I have plenty of time. If I want to build a house, I don't, but I have plenty of time for those other options to fit into my daily time pie. But when I was in the trenches, like you all are right now, there was no time for that. There was barely time for housework. You have to prioritize self-care or you're going to fall. And we don't want that. And your child doesn't need that. So probably all this talk about time scheduling and seasons of life is causing you a little bit of stress. So let's turn now to the next section, which is some top stress management techniques. So the most important thing to look at when you're talking about stress management is to look at parenting across your lifespan. This is one season that you're in. Your active parenting years from the moment you began to be a parent until you pass away. Well, that's kind of morbid, but we have to be realistic here. Your parenting is in different, you'll have different levels of engagement with parenting, different levels of needs of your child, different levels of you needing to pull away, because your role as a parent is to help your child individuate, which is to become an individual and separate from you emotionally and not necessarily, oh, I'll never talk to them again, but to become a fully functioning individual without your moment by moment engagement in their life. So it's a lifespan look. You need to look at your parenting as a lifespan thing. This is the seasons that I'm talking about. So next slide. What season are you in right now? Next slide. You are in the extreme parenting season. You just have to own it. You have to accept it and just say, okay, I'm in this. I'm in this. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I'm going to do this. And we're going to touch more on this as we continue with our webinar. So another great idea for stress management, next slide, is to say no over and over and over again to those things that aren't your top 3 to 5 priorities, so that you can say yes to those things that are your priorities, right? Maybe when you're an empty nester, you can spend 3 or 4 hours a week buffing out your car. Right now, that's probably not an option. You're in the trenches, right? Not everything gets your best yes, but your energy goes to your top priorities. So what are some examples? Maybe you could say, no, boss, I can't work an extra 3 hours of overtime this week. No, sis, I can't watch your kids while you go to Cancun for 2 weeks. No, I can't bring 4 dozen cookies to the school carnival tomorrow. Save your yeses for things that are your top priorities, not your neighbor's top priorities, not your spouse's top priorities, not your boss's top priorities, but your top priorities. Next slide, please. An important thing to discuss when we're talking about saying no is a type of boundary. Boundaries in being a parent are vital for your survival and for your child's well-being and for modeling healthy emotional regulation and distress tolerance in your own child. Most of us have children who have high sensory needs or maybe just highly emotional reactivity. When you have better boundaries, you are modeling for your child a good self-care. You're also helping them to regulate their own emotional response to situations and relationships, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't understand boundaries very well, and no is one of the best boundaries you can set, I encourage you to seek out some resources, whether they're online, books, or if you're in the Treasure Valley, our public libraries have resources available on setting boundaries. I'm going to list three specific books that have helped me when I was a parent in the trenches. One of those is Boundaries. It's by the author Anne Catherine. She was a psychotherapist for 40 years. She also has another great book called Where to Draw the Line. Cloud and Townsend also have a book called Boundaries. They're more faith-based. If that troubles you, you can just find another resource. And probably one of the best ones that's still relevant, again, these are older resources, is the book called Better Boundaries by 2 authors, Black and Enns, E-N-N-S. That's probably my current favorite book on boundaries that I refer most parents that come to see me, I refer them to that if they're having trouble setting boundaries in their own life and also with their own children. Next slide, please. I like to talk about anchor points of daily living. Maybe some of you are familiar with boating, but when you drop an anchor in the water, it keeps your boat from crashing into the shore or going into the rapids or going over a waterfall or something. Anchor points of daily living are the activities that you engage in that keep you well. They keep your ship from sinking. Things like good sleep, some exercise, nutritious food, time alone, time with healthy people. These are the anchor points that restore and maintain a sense of balance in your own life. Those are vital to managing stress in your life. And as a parent of child with special needs, you've got a lot of stress. Next slide, please. I want you to drop perfectionism. And this is so difficult for many parents. Having a child with special needs confronts us with our own humanity. It confronts us that our dreams of that perfect child may not have manifested in the way that we had idealized or dreamed of or imagined when we were expecting, whether you are a biological parent or an adoptive parent or a caregiver, or a guardian. Some of that grief that comes with that loss, you almost want to make yourself or their life so perfect to compensate for that. Just drop it. You're putting too much stress on yourself and way too much stress on your child. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be good enough. That's from D.W. Winnicott. Back in the 50s, he coined that term, good enough parent. You just need to be good enough. And your child only needs to be good enough. The room doesn't have to be perfectly cleaned. It just needs to be good enough. Their grades don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all A's. They just need to be good enough. You don't have to be the perfect employee for your boss. You just need to be good enough. You don't have to be the perfect neighbor. You just need to be good enough. And next slide, please. This is incredibly important. If you're struggling with any of these topics we're covering, if you feel that futility of thought, like, oh, what's Teresa even talking about? I can't do all that she's talking about. Now she's telling me to drop perfectionism. That's something else I'm going to fail at, right? If you're feeling overwhelmed, I encourage you to seek out therapy, seek out a counselor who can help you work through some of these issues. It is really tough to be a parent of a child with special needs. I relied so greatly on my own therapist when I was going through those tough years to help me restore a sense of balance and self-efficacy, which means being effective at being a parent. It's tough to raise these kids. I also encourage you, if you can, before you see a therapist or a counselor, is to get a complete physical. Some symptoms of anxiety and depression are caused by organic illnesses such as thyroid disorders, high blood pressure. Some of these other conditions can cause you to not react emotionally as well as you would like. So I encourage you to get a complete physical. And I want to throw this in because what I have discovered in my own practice is so many people aren't aware of what their employer offers or their spouse's employer might offer. You've heard of EAP programs. That stands for Employee Assistance Programs. Those are completely free, paid for by your employer. And many of them offer those services to the spouse and or dependents of the worker. So even if you are a stay-at-home parent, you still might have access to your spouse's employee benefits, which could be maybe 3 to 10 sessions with a counselor, completely free. So I encourage you to talk to your spouse or talk to your employer and see what benefits might be available to you. All right, I'm going to give you some other practical tips now. We're going to move to 8 ways to reduce the chaos in your home. Full disclosure, before I worked in mental health, I was a classroom teacher and I was also a professional home organizer. So let me give you some great tips right now that can reduce the chaos. The first one, number 1, is it's easier to prevent messes than it is to cure them. So I've got 4 tips under this. The first one, it sounds really basic. This is something everyone can do. It might be difficult to find a therapist. You might feel overwhelmed at looking at your time pile, but anyone can go out and buy a doormat. Have a doormat in front of, on either side of any entryway door to your home. That's going to cut down on your mopping, sweeping, and vacuuming. That's going to just reduce the visual chaos and the actual physical housework. See, I'm giving you some tips to cut down your housework time pie so you can put in self-care right there. The second one is, this is part of boundaries, teaching your children boundaries within your home, is perhaps introducing to your child or children only eating at a specified dining or kitchen table. I have a lot of parents come to my office whose children eat throughout the whole home. This causes crumbs, messes, spills, garbage fallout, dirty plates all over. If you can put the boundaries around your child's eating to the kitchen or dining area, you're going to cut down on your housework. And that's going to cut down on the chaos, which is going to be great for you. A third idea is to have a lidless, no lid on it, trash can in each room that your child goes in. And I'm not talking about those cute little, bathroom trash cans that you can get at the dollar store that are about a foot tall. I'm talking about a 13-gallon kitchen trash bag with a liner. I did that with my son in his bathroom. And I tell you what, because he was the type, he's on the spectrum, he's the type that won't put the toilet paper back on the roll. So his bathroom would get a bunch of empty toilet paper tubes lined up. And that has really been effective in helping him learn how to pick up trash better, cut down on the time that it would take for housework. So I encourage you to get the nice big kitchen trash cans. It's not going to look very pretty, but again, parenting is a temporary situation. And it's okay to not have everything look perfect, right? You don't have to have a perfect showroom house. You need things that are effective, and a lidless trash can is one of those. And along those same lines, I'm telling you, for your children's bedrooms, a lidless hamper is a great idea. Don't put a lid on a hamper. If you've got a child on the spectrum, if you've got a child with ADHD, when they take off their socks, they just need somewhere they can throw it, because it's going to be on the floor anyway. You may as well have it something that they can aim at. So have a nice big lidless hamper right in their room. Could be at the end of their bed, could be next to the closet. Don't put it behind a closing door. Kids with ADHD, or even kids that are feeling overwhelmed emotionally, regardless of their diagnosis, just have a hamper out in their room. It's not pretty, but you know what? You just need to be a good enough parent. All right, next slide. This is another top tip, is you need to have an extreme reduction in inventory in your house. And I'm talking about reduce the amount of toys you've got lying around. You can do something like have your child help you pack away some toys, put them in a box, put them in the garage for the summer maybe. It's just going to reduce the amount that they can pull out and make a mess with. An extreme reduction in the number of shoes they own. In the summer, they might only need 2 pair, right? Something, closed toes and maybe flip-flops. Hey, that's great. Take the rest of them out of their closet for the summer, put them in a box in the garage or in the closet, top shelf. The fewer things they have to pick up, fewer things you have to monitor them picking up. It's going to reduce the chaos in their life and make yours and their life better. And reduce the number of clothing they have. In this culture with such easy access to great shopping and lower priced clothing, you can have way too many clothes in your child's closet. If your child's clothes are suspended on their hanger because of the pressure of the number of clothes, you've got too many. Box up half of them, donate them, share them with another family, the child that's younger, or just box them up and put them in the garage for the summer. The fewer things you have to keep track of, the less chaos in your life. Next slide. This is really important, making cleanup part of your child's play. If this is not part of the current way you parent, I strongly encourage you to start doing this. Like any new habit, there's going to be a learning curve, and there's going to be some pushback from your child. There might be fits and crying and temper tantrums. When you make cleanup part of play, let me demonstrate briefly how this might look. This is how you might imagine it to look. Little Bobby, you need to pick up your toys right now. Cleanup is part of play. And, your child's going to respond, but I'm not done. I don't want to. There's too much out here. Meltdown, tears, throwing toys, and things that aren't clothes are going to go in that lidless hamper you just put in the corner, right? Making cleanup part of play is you as a parent saying, little Bobby, maybe give him a 5-minute warning. In 5 minutes, we're gonna transition from play. We're gonna go into the kitchen and make some lunch. So little Bobby's got the verbal cue, and then at 5 minutes you go, put your hand on little Bobby's shoulder, say, all right, time to clean up, sweetie. What do we do first? And have them be part of it. If they can't tell you what to do first, say, hey, I have an idea. Why don't we put all the Legos in the bin first, and then we can pick up your stuffed animals next. You do it with the child over and over and over. It's going to take more time at the outset, but once that child is used to that, over time, they should be able to do it with less fuss, less tantrums, hopefully no tantrums, and you'll have reduced the stress in your life and theirs, thereby enhancing everyone's well-being. What's not to love? And in fact, I also do this in my play therapy office. Cleanup is part of play. And when parents come in at the very end of session, sometimes they're like, well, what did you do? I'm like, well, we put the toys away. That's part of play. And so it is very important to help your child learn that. Otherwise, they have no boundaries. And they'll think that they can make these ginormous messes without there being consequences. Well, the boundaries of play is that there needs to be cleanup time. So there you have it. Number 4, oh, this is a sticky topic, homework strategies. I've listed a few ideas here for you. One of the best ones is just to use a timer. Set a timer for 10 minutes. That's about what most kids, even the squirmy ones, can handle with homework at a time. Although if you have a really driven child, they might be able to sit for 15 or 20. When the timer goes off, encourage your child to stand up, stretch, get a drink of water, maybe do some jumping jacks or playing with a fidget or some other sensory toy, and then focus again for another 10 minutes until their homework is done. That's the ideal, and you're probably thinking, Teresa, what fairyland do you live in? Well, there's some other ideas I've got for you. Another one is if your child is temporarily struggling with a specific area like math, or maybe your junior high or high school child is struggling with, English or, social studies, hire a tutor temporarily to help them through that. What you don't want to do is make homework this big fight between you and your child. There's so much more that's important to life than your child getting their homework done perfectly. And a good relationship between you and your child is one of those things that I encourage you to foster. So if you're finding a lot of conflict over a child's temporarily struggling, just hire a tutor. If you can't afford a tutor, talk to your school counselor or your child's school counselor, talk to the school principal or the classroom teacher. Maybe there's an after-school program where there's parent volunteers that come in and help students with their homework. And a great idea is to just have homework written out of your child's IEP. I did this, and in a couple of the school districts that my children were in, one school district was totally fine with it. The other one, it was a little more of a headache to do, but I kept pushing because I knew from my own experience as a mental health provider and from other mental health providers that I have been trained by and communicate with, there is more to life than academic excellence, and mental health is one of them, right? That's if you have goals for your child that are not in line with their capabilities, if you require straight A's to a child with severe ADHD, you are setting that child up for failure. So look at your own expectations and don't expect perfection from your child nor from yourself. You can also have it as a 504 accommodation plan if your child does not require an IEP. A 504 accommodation plan is a federal law. It's very simple to get set up. It pretty much takes a note from your child's counselor that they have a disabling condition. And some of those accommodations could be shortened as homework assignments. So there are lots of ways that you can address homework and still maintain your sanity and reduce the chaos in your home. Number 5, turn off devices in the evenings and weekends if possible. And I'm actually excited for Idaho Federation's next month's webinar talking about social media and what boundaries to set on devices. I'm not going to talk at great length about this, but as a psychotherapist and child play therapist, I really encourage parents to get those children off the screens, get them off, and number 6 is to get them outside as much as possible. What studies for especially children who have ADHD, getting them outside and on green space is actually restorative and can actually help their ability to focus and reduce some of their screeniness. Number 7, routine. I'm going to go back to those anchor points of daily living. The more routine that you have in your child's life, the better. Now it is a spectrum. On this end of the spectrum are the families that have no routines, very chaotic. Your children have no boundaries. That's not healthy. On the other extreme are the parents who are so rigid that they are inflexible, and you're setting your child up for neurotic behaviors if you do that. So on those extremes, if you can fall in the happy medium of routine, it's going to, those anchor points are going to reduce stress, going to reduce chaos in your life, in your child's internal sense of self, their internal compass. My oldest son, who had severe ADHD, 9 o'clock in the morning, hey mom, what's for dinner? Honey, it's only 9. So I got wise and started posting menus on the fridge. It doesn't have to be fancy. It can be like cheeseburgers and a salad, right? But so that that child knows what to expect. Routines are things like going to bed at the same time or close to the same time every night. You know, maybe bedtime doesn't have to be rigidly 9 o'clock every night. You're in bed, lights off, kid. It could be between 9 and 9:30 is when you need to be in bed, you know, get a book to read, turn your nightlight on, and start the process of falling asleep. Those routines are such great anchor points for your child, and they're going to reduce the overall chaos in your own life. Same with wake up times. If you have a teenager who sleeps till noon, that's not entirely healthy. Obviously, if they've stayed out really late the night before, like if it's a graduation party or something, obviously they're going to be doing that. But if you're more towards the end of no routines, no boundaries, really try to pull yourself closer to the middle ground. It's only going to benefit you and your child. And finally, which number 8 also sticks with number 2, the extreme reduction in inventory, is if you are shopping excessively, and as parents, our kids always seem to be needing something. But if you find yourself shopping daily or even weekly for a lot of stress relief, and you're purchasing too many things in your house is becoming more and more cluttered, you might want to seek help from a counselor or a therapist, or look for some online support groups, because you are medicating that way. When you purchase something, you get a little shot of dopamine, which boosts your mood. But if you're doing this to excess and your house is becoming more and more cluttered, I encourage you to seek out help. It's just going to reduce the amount of things that you're responsible for in your life. And the most important things that you're responsible for are going to be in your top 3 to 5 priorities, and you and your child have got to be on there, and shopping shouldn't be right now. All right, let's turn now to how to navigate the next crisis, because we know that there is a crisis that will happen. You're a parent. Crises are part of being a parent. They're part of our role. When you have a child with a major mental disorder, you're going to have more crises than the average parent. The most important thing to consider is to be prepared. You need to be like a scout. Carry snacks with you. To this day, I still carry high protein snacks in my bag. Carry your child's medication list if you can, whether it's in your smartphone or whether it's on an index card or it's in your planner, something you always carry with you. I just take a snapshot of my son's Mars sheets. If your son is on the spectrum or has any type of long-term or treatment such as Reshab, you'll understand what a Mars sheet is. Carry their provider list with you. If you've had a provider for a while, they're probably already as a contact in your phone. If you do have a smartphone, I encourage you to have a master list of all your child's providers. So in case something happens to you, your spouse, significant other, neighbor would know where to look to contact your child's providers. The next one, going back to these anchor points, it's all connected, everyone. Go back to your little boat, right? You don't want your boat to crash. Anchor points for you and your child, the good sleep, lots of joy, healthy recreation, positive activities, hobbies you enjoy, good nutrition, protein at every meal. That is so vital. I know I'm not a dietitian or a nutritionist, but protein at every meal it can prevent a lot of meltdowns in most children, especially if they have sensory issues, if they ever get hangry, or if they're ADHD or on the autism spectrum. You want to keep those children well fed, lots of good protein. Exercise you don't hate. Notice I put that in there because a lot of parents, we like to punish ourselves with, I gotta go to the gym and this, I go, 4 times a week and I just hate it. Why do you do that to yourself? Be nice to yourself. Find exercise you like. Maybe like a Zumba class or something. Maybe you want to go to a spinning class. My brother's a spinning instructor, and his name is Captain Crunch because he works at Crunch Fitness. So there you go. Something that you can enjoy. Find exercise that brings you joy, or at least you don't hate. Maybe 10 minutes of yoga on your living room floor. Throw down a mat and do 10 minutes of yoga. Something. Go for a bike ride. The weather's great in the Treasure Valley right now. If you're in the Treasure Valley, go for a bike ride if you can. Exercise that you enjoy. And another important thing to consider is your own and your child's health care. Obviously, you're a good parent, and obviously you're getting your child the health care they need. I'm just assuming that. What I'm not assuming is that you're getting your own self-health care. Your health care is every bit as important as your child's. So get your annual exams. Go get your blood drawn when you need to. Take the medication that your provider has prescribed if they've prescribed it. Go see your chiropractor if you know you've got back or neck issues. Go get a massage if you need some stress relief. All of these things can be part of your extreme self-care and can help you to navigate the next crisis. The better your health care, the better your mental health is going to be, and you're going to be stronger and be more resilient for when those crises do come, because they will come. You'll get a call from the principal at school at 10 in the morning. You might get a call from your child's HI worker saying, come get little Bobby, he's having a meltdown, and I can't navigate this one. So you've got to be prepared. So have your snacks in your bag, make sure that you're at the top of your game, and so you can be there, fully there for your child. All right, next slide. Triage. When we're talking about how to navigate the next crisis, I like the word triage. Mostly used in medical terms, like in the ER, when someone might be having a cardiac event, they're going to take top priority over somebody that maybe just needs 4 stitches on their finger from, using a box knife and cut themselves. Triage comes from a French word, which means to sort. So when you're looking at this crisis, whatever that crisis might be, you need to balance things out. You need to determine the urgency and the severity of the crisis, right? If your child's got suicidal ideations, that's a crisis. If they have suicidal attempts, that's an emergency, right? You have to kind of look at that. A crisis, you need to get into their provider. An emergency, you need to get into the ER. That's the difference there. And you also want to address the most severe. And that could also be if you have other children, maybe right now, little Susie's mental health takes precedence over little Bobby's OT needs. So you might have to put OT on hold. Maybe you're a single parent, you can't get them to their providers on time. You might just have to temporarily suspend OT while you address, your daughter's mental health needs. These are the hard decisions that parents need to make. And triage is a great way to look at it. The best question to ask yourself when you're talking about triage is, what can you drop? What can you drop that's not going to cause someone to lose their life or to lose the massive progress that they've made? And then when you're dealing with mental illness, a lot of times that's suicidal or homicidal ideations. So those things are going to take precedence maybe over OT or PT. And next slide is I really want you to focus on building and accessing your team. If you stop and consider the people in your life who are there for you, when you hit a crisis, those are the people to reach out to. A lot of Americans, especially when you're out west, we've got that pioneer spirit. We think we can just bully through these things, and you can't. You need to reach out to your social supports when you're going through a crisis. And on the flip side, when you're not in crisis, if you have a friend that is in crisis, that's a time when you look at your top 3 to 5 priorities. If their crisis is life-threatening, that's a time where you might have to bump some of those things down so that you can step in and be there for your friend. But really just build your team up, be there for each other, and that's a great way to help you and your friends also navigate the crises that are going to come with parenting these tough kids. Well, let's turn now to how to create and implement your own self-care plan, your extreme self-care plan, not just any plan, but your extreme one. The important thing to remember about creating your own plan is that you have to plan for daily self-care. Vacations can be great, weekends are awesome, but you have to think of self-care as a daily routine, much like you think of showering or brushing your teeth. And brushing your teeth, if you go to any dental hygienist, they're going to recommend 2, sometimes 3 times a day of brushing your teeth. Well, I'm a dental hygienist for your mental hygiene and well-being. At least 3 things a day you want to engage in that are enjoyable, restorative, that bring you joy. The next slide, don't postpone taking care of yourself to the weekends or to vacations, because the results of postponing your self-care could be your own exhaustion. Stress is real. Stress can really damage your body. Cortisol actually eats away at your heart muscle, so long-term high stress can actually be detrimental to your heart. Or emotional depletion. If you postpone self-care for just the weekends and vacation, you might become highly irritable. You might not be able to meet your child's needs emotionally when the next crisis comes up. you just might not be very effective. So please don't postpone your self-care for the weekends or vacations. Next slide. What I'd like you to do is actually come up with a list of activities, relationships, things that you can engage in, and other ideas that will cause you to experience peace and calm, gratitude, joy, restoration, health, maybe even excitement. List hobbies, exercise, right? The exercise that you don't hate, foods you enjoy eating that are 1,000 calories, like some of those venti macchiato things with the foam and the whipped cream and the sprinkles and the drizzle. They sound delicious, but that probably isn't the best for self-care. But list those things that are good for you. And literally, next slide, please, write them down and carry them with you. I would encourage you to, when I talk about being prepared for the next crisis, see it's all coming together, carry that list with you if you can. Even today as an empty nester, if I become overwhelmed because of the needs of my now adult child or children, I need to go to my list. I have to, and I look at them. Okay, I need some self-care, and I go down my list. Okay, I'm going to go do that. Okay, I'm going to do that. And I engage in those activities until I feel replenished. Even if I don't feel replenished, at least until I feel a little bit more emotionally grounded, a little more stable to confront whatever crises I'm facing. So I encourage you to literally write those things down and carry them with you. Next slide, please. Schedule those activities into your life on a day-to-day basis. Maybe put a spinning class, Monday, Wednesday, Friday in your schedule, fit it in. Maybe the next, Tuesdays and Thursdays, maybe you fit in a walk with your neighbor, which is not only building your team, but you're reaching out socially. Social engagement is so important, especially for parents of children with special needs, because raising these kids can be terribly isolating. I know I've been there. Just reach out, schedule these activities, these restorative events into your life. Make room for it. You have to be deliberate about this. So let's turn now to extreme examples of self-care. Remember, it's any extreme activity you engage in that demonstrates you're preserving or improving your overall well-being, even in times of crisis. And remember, it's not to be at the expense of your child. All right, so I'm just going to give you, next slide, please, a rundown of what our sample parents' extreme self-care plan might look like. Making and keeping all of your own medical and health-related appointments, right? Do that. Schedule your chiropractor once a month if you need it. Schedule a massage once a month if you need it. Following through with treatment recommendations, not just for your child, but for yourself. In medicine as well as in mental health treatment, non-compliance is a huge issue. If you see a provider and they lay out a course of treatment, here's what I want you to do, and people don't do it. Following through with those treatment recommendations is so important. That's going to be part of your extreme self-care plan, and I'm serious about this. Take your medication if it's been prescribed. Exercise 3 times a week if that's what your provider says that you need to do. Cut back on your schedule if that's what your provider's telling you to do. Get those fancy orthotics if you need to wear them in your shoes, or wear your night guard so you don't grind your teeth down. Whatever it happens to be, follow through with your medical and mental health providers' treatment recommendations. Keeping a consistent daily schedule, even on weekends. Trying to go to bed close to the same time every night. Maybe you want to go to bed at 10. Well, give yourself a leeway, right? Maybe extend it to 10:30, but maybe 11. But try to keep it as consistent as possible, and try to also keep your wake up times as consistent as possible. Try to keep meal times as consistent as possible. And this is also great for people who have health conditions like diabetes, or heart diseases, to keep your meal times consistent. Carving out daily time for recreation. Schedule it, people. Put it in your schedule. Fun for you, at least 3 things a day. Maybe you only have 10 minutes in the morning of time alone before your little ones wake up and your day starts with a bang. Maybe make time to give a little frother and froth your milk for your little espresso drink or something. Now, that might be extreme, frothing in the morning before breakfast, that's pretty extreme, but whatever it takes, schedule those things on your calendar and make time for them. Take pieces out of your pie that are not as relevant. Take time from social media and put in self-care every day. Consistent daily exercise, healthy meals and sleep, we've touched on that. Scheduling time alone, and I'm not talking about, isolating yourself. I'm talking about healthy solitude. Schedule it. If you need to schedule 20 minutes between one appointment to the next, if you're chauffeuring, your child back and forth, or if you're working, schedule maybe your commute time, add 10, 20 minutes onto it where you can stop somewhere quiet or peaceful, get a soda or get some tea or something. But just calm yourself down in solitude where you can just take a deep breath and prepare yourself for the rest of your evening. Whatever it takes, you've got to preserve your own well-being. And schedule time with people who encourage, love, and support you. Those friends that make you laugh, the friends that you can cry on their shoulder. And sometimes you just need a friend to just go see a movie with. Schedule time for you. You deserve it. And if you go down, your whole family goes down. And the reality is extreme self-care is a lifestyle. You've got to make it a lifestyle. This is how you parent on your lifespan of parenting in this season of hands-on, active, crazy, extreme parenting. It's a lifestyle. You're probably not very good at including self-care yet. This might be the first time you've ever been introduced to this idea. So it's going to take some practice over and over and over for you to be good at self-care. And I want you to get so good at self-care that if I see you in the community, you'll come up to me and say, Teresa, I frothed my milk this morning in my latte. And I'll be like, way to go. Fist bump. Right on. I want to hear these things. If you see me in the community, come up and talk to me. Tell me what you're doing to take care of yourself. Parenting, it's hard. Those of us with kids with major mental disorders, we got to stick together. We got to take care of ourselves. And we got to share our triumphs too. You don't have to be perfect at self-care. You just need to be good enough. And with that, I'd like to invite Carol to come back over here. We're going to be doing a poll, and I'll turn that over to Carol now, so she can.
And I'm going to turn that over to Susie and Cindy.
All right.
They're behind the camera. So those questions will be coming up, and as they're coming up, Teresa and I can just kind of chat because you're not actually going to see us. You'll see the questions.
Okay.
And what I take away from that, so much of what you're saying is that idea of being really intentional. And I think when we get overwhelmed, that's sometimes the first thing that goes out the window, because we're just flying by the seat of our pants.
Absolutely. And we're trying to preserve our children's well-being more than our own. But if we go down, our family's going to suffer. Our children are going to suffer. Mm-hmm. So it is so vital to keep up with daily self-care.
Right. Well, yeah. Just taking that time of, I think I love that idea of just like really reflecting, because I think when we're flying by the seat of our pants, we're just like, when someone calls, it's like, I need this for the, for the class. Can
right.
Do the cookies or whatever. And we're just like, yes, because we don't know how to say no.
Right.
Because we're not taking that time to go through those steps of what is it that I really need to do? What am I capable of doing? What is it that my family needs me to do? And yeah, I love the idea of prioritizing, really thinking strongly each day. Like, what am I going to try to do this day? What am I going to get rid of this day?
Right.
And giving us, and I think we've got a culture that really pushes us to, to do more,
Absolutely.
to be accomplished,
Absolutely.
to push out, that our kids are accomplished, and to like not buy into what our culture is telling us.
Exactly. And you can either feel the resentment of not setting boundaries or the burnout that comes from not setting boundaries, right? Your time, your schedule, your yeses. If you don't put boundaries on your yeses, you're going to feel that resentment or burnout. You might make people angry for saying no. You might disappoint them. They can handle their emotions. They're responsible for handling their own emotions. And as parents, we're responsible for helping our children handle their own.
Yeah.
And what good are we to them if we won't even say no to things that aren't our priority? So
in this sort of fast-paced world.
Yes.
So one of the things I want to also mention is that we are really trying to get out across the state. We're doing these kind of informal coffees. So as you talked about, like connecting with people that really is a good culture. It's positive. It's reinforcing and things like that. And a lot of times that really comes from other parents who walk the same walk that you do. You may have really good friends and family members, but when you don't get it, sometimes there's that defensiveness, there's that wall. So we're looking for opportunities. So if there are folks like within your community that you're like, you know what, I know enough people, or we can work, I would love to have you come to our neck of the woods and let's see what we can do about, bringing some parents together And it's as much that idea of spending some informal time,
Right.
getting to know people, developing a natural support network, sharing resources and things like that. So I'm just gonna throw that out there. If anybody's interested, call the Federation, email me, cdixon, DIXON, @idahofederation.org, and let's see what we can do. I also wanted you to talk a little about what you're doing as far as your practice. So for those folks that are here in the Treasure Valley, like how would they contact you?
Absolutely. I'm one of the partners at Behavioral Health Associates. So you can call our office and contact my office manager. She can get you set up. I treat children ages 3 on up on the spectrum. I specialize in autism, ADHD, and anything related to the adoption process, whether it's pre, current, or post-adoption in parents and or children. And I also treat, I love to treat parents with children who have major mental disorders because I've been there, I've done that, and I know how vital my own therapy was in helping me navigate those difficult waters of raising children who were on the autism spectrum, had ADHD, had bipolar disorder, all of these big ones. And so it was very, very vital for me to be connected to a good therapist. So if you are interested, feel free to contact Behavioral Health Associates. You can just Google it. I don't know the number right off the top of my head.
Google.
Maybe it's too much screen time, huh? It's in my phone. But feel free to contact me. I am accepting new patients. There might be a week or two wait list, but I do have some openings, especially this summer. So feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to connect with you and help you out in any way I can. But I just want to thank you for inviting me here.
Yeah,
It's wonderful to share with other parents who are going through the things that I went through, and Idaho Federation Families has been such a great resource throughout the years. And I actually used you guys years ago too, so I did. It's wonderful. So this has come full circle. See what I did right there? I had my triage, right? I couldn't volunteer when my kids were in the trenches, but I can sure volunteer now. So priorities, everyone.
All good. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna say we're done. I think, are the poll questions still going?
No, we're done.
Okay. Thank you all for joining us. We will see you next month in Vashti, Somerville. It's here. We haven't nailed down that date. We've kind of got some things floating around, but that's the plan for June. Holy moly.
Summer. All right. Thanks,
Thank you.
Carol.